Welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster, and I have a banger for you today. I was able to catch up with former UConn legend Emeka Okafor. We talked about a lot of things, including the fact that he is 40 years old and still not officially retired. I asked him about his comparisons with Adama Sanogo. I asked him about what he says to J.J. Redick whenever he sees him about the 2004 Final Four game. It was a lot of fun to talk about. You know what's not going to be a lot of fun to talk about? The last two games. I guess we have to talk about the week that was. Since the last time that we spoke, UConn has taken their first two losses of the season. They fell at Xavier 83-73, and they fell at Providence 73-61. Before we get into the why, before we get into what happens with those matchups, I want to talk about the why. I want to talk about what actually happened here, and what actually is going on with this team. So let's start with this. I think it's pretty simple. UConn lost on the road to the two teams that are, in my opinion, the other two teams in the top three in the Big East. If you want to throw Marquette into that conversation as well, I'm fine with that. I have a little bit of doubts about them on the defensive end, and I don't think they are quite as proven offensively or from a coaching perspective as Xavier and Sean Miller are. But I love Shaka. I love what that Marquette team is doing. I think that they have a ceiling as high as anybody in the Big East. They are as dangerous as anybody in the Big East, and their offense is as explosive as anybody in the Big East. If you want to say that there are four challengers for the Big East regular season title, I'm with it. UConn lost to two of those challengers on the road. And both of those teams happen to match up really well with UConn in the one key spot on the floor where they are having some difficulty right now defending. We're going to get into that. I also think that both Providence and Xavier have top 10 to 15 coaches in America. The bottom line is this. You don't win in the Cintas Center when Xavier is playing well, and right now they are playing really, really well. You don't win in the Dunk, period. Providence has won 27 of their last 28 games in that building. They've beaten a lot of good opponents in that building. The only game that they lost was when Villanova went in there and beat them when Colin Gillespie went for 33 points. They had, I think they won like 89-84. That's the only team that's beaten them in that building in the last 2 years. That is a fortress. And we're going to get into that in a second. But listen, I told you guys on this very podcast before the Villanova game that if UConn goes 3-2 during this 5-game stretch that they're currently on, which includes Creighton on Saturday and at Marquette on Wednesday, then that would be a win. I don't think a lot of people agreed with me. I don't think a lot of people wanted to listen to me. I tried to warn you that this was going to be the toughest 2-game stretch that we have in the entire season. You beat Creighton, you win at Marquette, you are 3-2 against Villanova, Creighton, Marquette, Providence, and Xavier. That is a win. The truth is this. UConn was never going to go undefeated in the Big East this year. They never were. Anybody that expected them to go 20-0 in this conference was lying to themselves and was completely delusional. I know that there are some fans in this fan base that are delusional. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in kind of hoping to see that happen, but I think in our heart of hearts, we all knew that wasn't going to happen. To win the regular season title in the Big East this year, what you need to do is defend your home court. You need to go 9-1 or 10-0 in your home games, and you need to find a way to win 1 or 2 road games against those other 5 top teams in the league. The top 6 to me: Creighton, Villanova, Marquette, Providence, UConn, and Xavier. That's 5 road games that each of those top 6 teams is going to play against those other top 6 teams. You win 1 or 2 of those, you defend your home court, you're looking at a 16-4, 15-5 kind of season in the Big East. That's going to be enough to win the regular season title this year, in my opinion. And I still think that UConn is in a position where they are going to be able to do that. You just got to steal a couple. You don't have to win them all. Just steal a couple. So I think that all of that is still doable. All of these teams are still coming to our building, and UConn is still a top 4 team on KenPom. I think as a state, right now, we need to just take a collective woosah. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, I do think that there are some major takeaways from the last 2 games that we need to talk about. The first is the 4 spot. Look, I believe that this is the second most important position in college basketball. The most important one is the point guard spot, right? I personally tend to lean towards teams that have 2 playmakers and 2 lead guards and 2 initiators and 2 guys that can kind of play that role, whatever you want to call it. Having guys that can make plays, out of nothing is just so incredibly important to playing basketball and succeeding in basketball at this level. The second most important position in my mind is the 4 spot, right? You need a player there that can win the mismatches and create the mismatches. You need the guy that can exploit a smaller defender by taking him down to the post. You need the guy that can exploit a bigger defender by taking him out on the perimeter, putting on the ball on the floor, knocking down a jump shot over him, being able to kind of run off screens. In theory, Alex Karaban is that guy, right? In practice, Alex Karaban is a freshman. And we kind of saw that youth get exposed a little bit by Zach Fremantle, Jerome Hunter as Xavier, and by Bryce Hopkins with Providence. And look, Hopkins, by the way, he's the best player in the Big East. He is the Big East player of the year. I love Adama Sanogo. Bryce Hopkins is the Big East player of the year. The fact that he only played, 6 minutes a game at Kentucky last season is coaching malpractice. Imagine what Kentucky would be this year if that dude was still on their roster. We wouldn't be talking about issues that they have offensively, right? He is such a good player. He's a pro. He's an NBA player. I think he's a second-round pick, if not a late first-round pick. And there isn't a guy in the Big East that has had more success playing and thriving with dudes that play that role than Ed Cooley has. Think Ben Bentel. Think LaDante Hetton. Think Rodney Bullock. He just loves having those guys that can be those mismatch problems. Bryce Hopkins fits that to a T. He is an absolute stud. There's no shame in getting beat by him. I'm not trying to dog Alex Karaban here. Like, he's a freshman. I think he actually played pretty well considering the circumstances that he was put into. Bryce Hopkins is an absolute dude. And the fact that Devin Carter has kind of become a dude as well, like, Providence is a really good team. I think that they are better than they were last season when they won the regular season title. That is a really, really, really good team, guys. But back to Karaban, he's not quite physical enough yet to be able to deal with a guy like Zach Fremantle in the post. He's not quite quick enough yet to be able to deal with Bryce Hopkins when he pulls him away from the basket. He doesn't quite have the feel to be able to do all of the little things you need to do to be able to kind of make up for some of those lack of physical tools when you're going up against bigger or stronger players. Like, for example, there were a couple times last night where he beat Bryce Hopkins to a spot. Bryce Hopkins lowered a shoulder. He took that shoulder to the chest, and then he just didn't fall down. You fall down, and I think Bryce Hopkins probably picks up like 1 or 2 charges. Right? Alex Karaban didn't quite do that yet. He's not there. He's a freshman, man. Like, there's a reason why there's a quote in coaching circles. The best thing about freshmen is they become sophomores. Karaban will get there. Give him time. I'm all in on him. He's a very, very good player. This is not his fault. And I just, when you're asking a freshman to go toe to toe with a senior in Zach Fremantle that's been all Big East and a guy that is the best player in the conference in Bryce Hopkins, like, he's never going to win those matchups. And the fact that he made a couple threes, he spaced the floor, he got some offensive rebounds, he was he made it about as tough for them as he could. I don't know what more you could have asked from Alex Karaban in those matchups. Now, maybe you want to put Andre Jackson in those spots, but the problem with putting Andre Jackson on Bryce Hopkins last night is then you need Alex Karaban on one of Devin Carter or Noah Locke or Alan Breed. And what Ed Cooley would have done is just run those dudes off of screens and run those dudes off of staggers and made Karaban chase them around screens. And Karaban is not, like, you don't want that matchup. I think it ends up being a worse matchup, and you risk Andre Jackson getting into foul trouble. I just, to me, that's one of those ones where it's a difficult matchup to kind of figure out. And frankly, when Samson Johnson gets back, the guy that started the first game of the season, the guy that started the scrimmage against Virginia, then maybe we don't have this conversation about that mismatch being an issue. But that's neither here or there. I don't think you can be that. That is the spot where teams exploited UConn, and kind of where other teams won the game, where Providence and Xavier won the game. But I don't think that that's necessarily something where you can say that's coaching malpractice from Dan Hurley or Alex Karaban needs to sit there. It just is what it is, man. Like, those are really, really good teams with really, really good coaches that found a way to get it done. UConn's got to be able to do the same thing at home. One other thing I want to note, Andre Jackson, the 3-point shooting, like, part of the reason that becomes a problem for UConn is that teams can play 2 bigs against them and then hide the other big man on Andre Jackson and not have him out on the perimeter. So when you play small, the advantage is that you force teams that play big to have to come out and guard you on the perimeter. When you have Andre Jackson out there, you don't have to force the other team to put a 4-man out there and have them guarding on the perimeter. That just, it kind of clogs things up. It's an issue that we've known is coming all season long. And I touched on it a little bit in the Villanova game. The ability to get Andre Jackson to be the guy that's in the middle of the floor throwing the ball into the post changes a lot of things. Andre Jackson was in a lot of foul trouble by the time he kind of really got it going. Providence had already had control of that game last night. It is what it is. I also think it's important to note here that UConn plays a style that can overwhelm lesser teams, right? I've said this over and over and over again. The things that they excel at this year are the things that you can control: rebounding, defense, effort, being bigger, being more athletic than teams. When they can force turnovers and get in transition, they are a nightmare. When they are getting defensive stops and getting defensive rebounds and turning those into quick opportunities on the break, they are absolutely electric to watch, and they are unstoppable. When they can punk you in the paint and on the offensive glass, then they're going to get a lot of easy baskets out of that. The problems arise when teams can take that away and force you to play in the half court. And that's kind of what Providence and Xavier forced them to do. Xavier scored so many easy buckets that UConn was just not able to get out in transition. When you got to take the ball through the net and inbound it, it kind of limits your ability to get out and run. Providence was the more physical team. Bottom line, they were the more physical team that got to the offensive glass. They made the plays they needed to be able to play. Where UConn struggles is when they're forced to play in the half court, right? So much of what they run is scripted, and so much of what they do on the offensive end of the floor is a result of their playbook and Danny Hurley's scheming ways to kind of create guys' shots. You get scouted really, really well in this league. UConn has as deep of a playbook as anybody in college basketball, but the problem is that guys like Ed Cooley and guys like Sean Miller and guys like Greg McDermott have been around long enough that they know what a lot of those plays are. And when you can take some of them away, UConn does not have a guy. When you take some of like the robotic stuff that they run away, they don't have a guy that you can give the ball to and say, go get us one, right? Tristan Newton is not quite athletic enough to be able to get to the rim at this level and create at this level that UConn needs him to. Jordan Hawkins is a guy that thrives at running off of screens and thrives at being able to create shots when he gets an angle on someone, when he's coming off of a down screen. Like, part of the reason he gets fouled so much is this dude runs so hard and so fast and so long, and he's so good at coming right off of the shoulder of some of these staggered screens that when you're chasing him and when you're sprinting, when he catches it and elevates, your momentum is going to carry you into him. That's why he's getting fouled on all of these three-pointers. Problem is, you need that created for you, and it's easy to kind of get it taken away, right? And UConn does not have a guy that you can just give the rock to and say, go get us one. Andre Jackson, love him. But if you're playing 5 feet off of that dude, 6 feet off of that dude, the shot that you're going to get is a 3 from Andre. And that is just, at this point, he's shooting 29% from beyond the arc. That's the shot that other teams want. Adama Sanogo, love him. But he's kind of like Jordan in the sense that those shots need to be manufactured for him. You're not just throwing it to him 8 feet from the basket and asking him to go create a good look. That's not an efficient way to play. That is not the best way to put him in a position to succeed. So, I don't think that's an issue, right? But I don't think any of that is a surprise. There's a reason why UConn went out and got Tristan Newton in the portal and went after some other guys like Jameer Young and some of these other point guards that were in the portal, because we knew this was going to be an issue without RJ Cole there. And to be completely frank, like, UConn losing on the road to Providence is not something that's going to come as a surprise or something where it's going to come as a disappointment, right? Like, I hate using the term overrated, and I don't think that UConn was overrated, because if we're going by the ratings, UConn was number 1 on KenPom, they were number 1 on Torvik, and at the same time, they were number 2 in the polls. If you really want to get specific with it, they were frankly underrated based on the ways that the metrics that we value in this sport, right? But I don't think there's anybody in college basketball that is head and shoulders above anybody else in the sport this year. I think that if you look at Houston and Tennessee and Kansas and UCLA and UConn and Alabama and Arizona and some of these teams that I forgot, like, there are going to be a half dozen teams that get ranked number 1 in college basketball this year. It's the kind of season where there are a dozen teams that are usually in that like 7 to 10 range nationally, that are usually like those good 2 seeds. And there's nobody that you look at and say, yeah, we know they're going to win 35 games. You could just pencil them into the Final Four. That is a great college basketball team, at least not yet. So everyone's going to take losses. Every conference race is going to be complicated. And anyone that was expecting UConn to go 31-0 in the regular season probably had unrealistic expectations. The key now for UConn is to find a way to get past those 2 losses, get your confidence back up, go out and beat Creighton on home on Saturday. The key for UConn fans, the key for the people that are listening to this right now, is make sure that Gamble, make sure that the XL Center Make sure that both of those buildings are as hellish of an experience for Creighton and for road teams as the Dunk was for us and the Cintas Center was for us. That's what you got to do. Make it be a nightmare to walk into that building and play. Positive vibes only from here on out on this podcast. None of us thought that we were going to be here. None of us thought that this season we were looking at a potential like top 10 caliber team. At least I didn't. I would have been happy with a top 25 team competing for top 4 in the Big East, make a run in the Big East tournament, find a way to, get to the second round, get to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament, and we're good, right? We are playing with house money right now. We can still celebrate the fact that this is a really good team, despite the fact that they took a couple of tough losses in really difficult places to play. And last thing I'm going to mention, stop fucking whining about the referees, right? Stop complaining about the officials. UConn doesn't have someone that can get into the lane and create fouls. Tristan Newton is not able to get past people. He was a guy drawing all the fouls for UConn earlier in the season. He's not getting into the lane. He has one free throw the last 2 games, right? Adama Sanogo, I love him, but he's more of a finesse guy in and around the basket. You just go vertical against him and keep him in front, you're not getting any fouls. There's physicality in the post, right? These other teams, the tougher teams, are the ones that generally get the foul calls. Last night, Xavier was the tougher team. Again, I'm sorry, Providence was the tougher team. On Saturday, Xavier was the tougher team. Stop whining about foul calls. Just stop it. That's what poverty programs do. UConn's a team that shoots a lot of threes and has the finesse guy in the post and doesn't have someone that can beat you off the bounce and go draw fouls in the paint. That's why they're not getting these foul calls. Yes, the moving screen against Zach Fremantle was a really, really, really bad missed call. That was the only one where you can look at and say that was a horrible call. And that's not because refs are biased against Dan Hurley. Just fucking stop with it. I can't stand it. You sound like babies. You make us all look bad when UConn fans do that. Stop bitching about the officials. Now that I get off my soapbox, before we get into this interview with Emeka Okafor, make sure you check out the merch store. You can get the Field of 68 Top Dogs t-shirt right here. Forever and always will be the Top Dogs. Make sure you subscribe to the Field of 68 Daily if you want to be able to catch up with everything college basketball every morning, 8:30 a.m. directly into your email inbox. It is free 99, and there's nothing better than free 99. So, with that said, let's get into this interview with none other than Emeka Okafor. And now let me welcome on to the latest episode of the Top Dogs podcast, an All-American, a national champion, the 2004 NCAA tournament most outstanding player, a Big East player of the year, and the number 2 pick in the 2004 NBA draft, none other than Emeka Okafor, a UConn legend. Emeka, it is an honor, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Rob. Doing good.
So what are you up to these days? How are you keeping yourself busy?
So I haven't officially retired, so I still, I still have the bug, still playing. I was in Korea pre-pandemic, still looking for the right overseas opportunities, but my main gig is hubby and father of 2.
What's your favorite part about being a dad?
Just every day is different, just watching my daughter and my son grow and interact with each other and myself. It's like kids say the darndest things to show like every single moment of every single day. And it's just, I gain appreciation for what my parents went through. Number one, it's like, wow, okay, you guys did this, but in a country and custom, country with customs very different than yours, and, I have gained I get just so much respect for them, for what they've done. But I just love it.
How old are your kids now?
My daughter's 9 and my son's 5.
Yeah, so my spread, my son is 7 and my daughter's 3, and they are spread enough apart where they can play a little bit, but they're close enough in age where it's everything is a battle, everything is a fight in this day and age. I think the 3-year-old, everyone talks about the terrible twos. It was the 3-nagers for me. I just couldn't get
3-nagers, man. Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned that you're still kind of you're not retired. You're still looking for the right opportunity. Back injuries are kind of what did you in right after 2013. What?
Neck actually.
It was neck. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then so there was a 4-year gap, and then you started playing again. How tough was it to kind of get back into shape and get back into playing? Because you go from being the peak physical condition to 4 years off.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed everything about being an athlete. especially when it came to just being in shape and staying in peak physical form. And I've always prided myself on being a good sweat away from uh, being in game shape. And during my layoff, I kept that same mentality the best that I could. I was obviously hindered with my neck injury, but I was still going as hard as I could, reasonably, and getting back in shape wasn't the toughest part. It was just like really just trying to actually find an opportunity to get out there and run around.
So why are you still chasing this, right? Like you're yeah, what are you, 39 now?
I'm 40, 40.
40. So what is it? Is it just love for the game, the love for the competition, the camaraderie, the locker room? Like what is it about the
It's
sport that has you hooked?
it's all of it. Basketball has been very, good to me. I started playing it in a group setting when I was 8 at the YMCA back in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And it's been a major part of my life. It's provided me with a college education, provided me with, a job. It's provided me just with satisfaction. I met my wife through basketball. So, indirectly, actually, I met my wife the same day I got drafted, actually. So, there's
Hell of
been
a day.
this hell of a day, so there's so many good memories associated with it. And then just, part of the basketball provided me with a quest. Every single morning I got up to get better, but I wasn't necessarily trying to get better just at basketball. It was me trying to be the best that I could be.
Mhm.
So there's that element to it. So then you have the camaraderie, the locker room, the fan interactions, and you just combine it all together, and it's really. I've had this conversation with a lot of a lot of professional players. Say, hey man, do it as long as you have the itch for it. Because once you stop, that's it. Like once that boat sailed, it's done. So get it out your system, and when you're done, you're done. And at this point, it's like, hey, man, I've done well. I have my family now. It's just it's not chasing anything. It's like I enjoy it now. If uh, with this particular with any opportunity now, it's like okay, if it fits within the framework of family, if it's okay, if my family's not going to be disrupted by me going out, then hey, let me take a little stint and go out and hoop. But at the end of the day, I just love it.
Well, I'll tell you this: if it doesn't work out for you overseas, I do know a men's league team in Jersey that could use a five man. So just
So,
keep that one on the back burner. You mentioned you're from growing up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
no,
How
no. So
does
I grew up in Houston. I spent a
so
quick
yeah,
stint in
Houston, you're
Barstow.
Houston, Bel Air High School, right? So
Yeah.
you're from the Midwest. How does a kid from the Midwest end up in Stores, Connecticut? I don't think I've ever heard that recruiting story, that recruiting pitch.
At the time, I just wanted to get as far away from home as possible. I have a bit of a sailor's bug, and I like adventure, and it just staying in my local surroundings just wasn't. I thought in order for me to grow grow more as a person, I had to leave.
Mhm.
Far, the farther the better. The further the better.
So when you first met Jim Calhoun, right? I gotta imagine they don't have a lot of people like him in Texas or Oklahoma, do they?
No, no, no. So yeah, at the when I met him, very very charismatic, very straightforward, and at that point, I'd met with a number of college coaches. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm not going to get caught up with who the coach is, but pay attention to the message and even read between the lines of that. And the thing that drew me to coach, he was just a straight shooter. Like, hey man, look, here's the minutes we have available. I'm not they're there. I can't promise them to you. If you earn it, you can get it, but um, you'll be the ultimate decider of how much you play or don't play. And he just really just delivered a straight message and said what this said what the situation was, and I respected that.
you developed into one of the all-time great players to come out of a UConn program that has a lot of great players in their history. Is that when you were going there, is that something that you kind of thought was possible? Like I'm always interested in guys that kind of develop and grow over the years. What like kind of what their goal is when they end up going to the program. Like, did you see NCAA tournament most outstanding player in your future?
So funny, like I was very green going to college. I didn't really know very much about college basketball, like the nuances. Even, we'll jump ahead as we were, as I was on the bus going to the Big East tournament. I wasn't quite sure what the Big East, like the significance. I'm like, is this March Madness? Is this what it is? And my teammates are like, nah, man, this is the conference tournament, and it helps with seeding. And then I'm like, okay, okay, okay. But my main goal coming into stepping on campus, like, all right, you know, as a basketball, every high school basketball player has dreams of making it to the NBA, right? So there was that, right? So okay, I want to make it to the NBA, but also I want to graduate. So in order, and at the time, the longer you stayed, if you stayed to your senior year, it kind of affected your how you look come draft time. It kind of tended to diminish your draft status. So I'm like, all right, man, look, so let's try and graduate in 3 years. Like in my mind, I was like, okay, 3 year minimum. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had locked in 3 year minimum, graduate in 3 years, and if you can make it to the NBA, you make it to the NBA. If you don't, you stay your fourth year and get a master's. And it was really the goal was to graduate, to potentially make the NBA. In order to do that, I had to work. It's just like, all right, those are the goals. Then the rest is just working hard and uh, and just following the plan. And to be honest, like the champion, like all that other stuff, as it once I started working and once I got in the flow, that's when like the championships, that
Mm-hmm.
championship possibility started to sneak in. Like my mind was just, you know, like things didn't happen, things like that didn't happen to me. Even the fact that I was on the UConn campus, I was like, wow, I'm at a major college university playing basketball. I never would have thought that, a person like me, I wasn't the most highly recruited person. So there was a really a point in time where I thought I wouldn't play past high school. So now I'm at the University of Connecticut. It's like, okay, I'm here. Okay, let's set these two goals and then let's go from there. Freshman year happens, then it's like, okay, I get the lay of the land. I get a taste. I'm in, we're in Syracuse battling against Maryland. We're in the timeout. It's 77-74. Coach, and there's like maybe 2 minutes left or something like that. And coach has a certain air about him as he's saying, "Look at the scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard." I turn to my team. I'm like, "What is he talking about?" Hey, man, that's the score that they beat. That they won the national. When they won the national championship, it was 77-74. That's why he's doing that. I'm like, okay. Even in that moment, there was so much happening that I couldn't really process the significance of winning that game and going to a Final Four, even what that meant. But
Mm-hmm.
after that freshman year, after everything settled in and soaked in, it's like, okay, all right, you know, the overall plan isn't changed, but the intentions, like, all right, now I know, okay, I know this is a championship quality team. We can aspire to that. Now that's in the periphery. Let's figure out how to get that, and whatever comes with getting a championship comes with it.
Yeah, it's very much a testament what you just said. You got to fall in love with the process, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
you fall in love with the process, and you're going to end up reaching the goals that you want,
Yeah.
you can't. It's not the results that you have to love; it's the process that you have to
Process.
love to reach those goals. Adama Sanogo. I've seen a lot of people compare him to you. Every time they play a game, they have those graphics up, right? This is Emeka Okafor's junior year stats. This is Adama Sanogo's junior year stats. How do you think your two games kind of line up and match up?
Uh, you know, I think that we're very similar players and play very similar roles to to our respective team. He's a solid force. You can see that all his teammates depend and rally around him. They're buying into the notion that he is the on and off the court leader, as he is, and he's also subscribing to that notion as well. His dominance in the low post, his defensive efforts, his just overall demeanor, and presence on the court, I think resembles how I played in 2000, well, during my tenure there.
Yeah, I think you guys have the same. The jump hook looks exactly the same.
Jump hook, yeah.
It's kind of you're fading away a little bit. It's kind of it's almost like a floater more than it is a jump hook. It's like the same jump hook.
Yeah.
So you played in the NBA for a long time. When you got drafted versus now, the NBA is obviously the game's kind of changed a little bit, right? Everything is kind of spaced out more. Shooters are more the priority than big guys. Adama Sanogo and to a point, Donovan Clingan are two guys that are just exceptional college bigs. What do you think they have to do to be able to kind of get to that next level to where they are now valuable pieces for an NBA franchise?
I think so. So even though shooters seem to be, premiered a little bit more now, there's still room for the big man. You still need someone who's going to just go down there and be a dog, go out there, get rebounds, be a force, be some type of presence. I think there will always be a need for that. When I played, you had 3 or 4 guys on a roster who did that, right? Now maybe 1, 2, right? So the number of slots have gone down, but I think that a jump shot will help, and I've seen Dama, he's expanded his range.
Shooting those threes. Do you get jealous of that at all? By the way, do you see him doing that? And you're like, man, I wish Calhoun let me shoot some threes.
It's not. It's just a completely different mind for I was thinking, during the prime, during my heyday, it would be a waste of time to even shoot to practice it. If I was practicing, like, all right, like, why even, when in the game are you going to shoot this three? Like, there's no room for it, right? So there is a little bit of envy, like, oh man, you guys are, now they're encouraging, hey man, just let it fly, just don't even, let's throw it up there, and that's cool. But yeah, so I think that will help, but I think that Adama has great NBA body. I think that he can move his feet. I think that he can finish. I think he has that dog in him that will serve him well on the next level. And Donovan, he's showing that he has that as well.
Yeah, he's got a chance to be special, man. He's got a chance to be special. This is my favorite question to ask the guys that I've had on here that played in the 2004 title game. All right, you're down by 8 points. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it wasn't the title game. It was the Final Four game. Down by 8 points. Mm-hmm. There's 3 minutes left in the game. Mm-hmm. What is that conversation like? What is that mindset? It's 75-67. You look up at the clock.
2:56 left.
Yeah,
it's 2:56 left.
Yeah. So what is that? What is that mindset? Like, what are you saying when you're in the huddle? How are you guys at the point where it's like, okay, we can still win this?
So that game, that drive, that run was started with a Rashad Anderson 3. I remember it clearly. He came, he hit a 3 to make it down by 5. I'm like, finally, okay. And then, we came down and we got to stop. And then once we got that ball and then scored again, it's like, all right, game on. Now there's no, I don't remember like any particular speech or any, rah-rah moment, but just everybody as a collective unit just knew it was time. Like, it was just like, it was time. The bucket leading into the one where we finally took the lead. I was at the free throw line. Josh was fighting for the rebound. He tapped it. I was, he'd been my teammate the whole year. So I just felt it. Ran to the ball. Me and Luol Deng were wrestling for it. In my mind, I'm like, all right, man, if we're tangling too much, the ref's gonna call a jump ball, and I don't know which arrow. I just gotta rip it up and throw it. Ripped it up, threw it up, it went in. And it's really it was just a collective effort, collective will of we will persevere. We're just too dang close to let this one slide.
Yeah, the play you just mentioned where you took the lead. I literally just watched it before we recorded again. I probably watched it about 30 times in my life. It's an all-time great college basketball moment for me. But it was you got a post touch, right? And then you missed the shot, and it just kind of there's a scrum for the ball, and you go and you get it, and then you score again. And to me, that just kind of summed up one kind of like what you were as a player at your core, right? And two, what that era of UConn teams was, where they were maybe not necessarily the absolute most talented, the most skilled, or going to play the prettiest brand of basketball, but you're gonna win the fight, and that's how you won those games. And to me, that just kind of that moment right there summed it up.
Yeah, Coach, he all he wanted out of his players was just toughness. Personality wise, we might have been different, but everybody was tough. 1 through 13, however many people, everybody was just tough to the core. And, and when moments in the game got tough, that would just come, it would just, you just see it just raising, and that game in particular, man, it's one of my all-time favorite basketball moments. Even I want to say, and even more so than the championship. I'll explain why. Being down to 8 points with under 3. Usually in college basketball, it's done, right? You're normally done, but we banded together. We scored. We got the stops that we needed, and we got the buckets that we needed, and we persevered. And that locker room, like, you talking about basketball, like I've never experienced a higher basketball moment than when the buzzer went off and we all marched off into that locker room, because we knew we're like, all right, that was a championship game. There's no way. First of all, Georgia Tech snuck a win on us early that season, and we owed them, and we just knew that they didn't have what we had, and we just proved it. And that locker room was just it was just crazy.
Did you remind JJ Redick about that every time you saw him in the NBA?
I saw, I had a little stint with them in at the 76ers, and joked about it once or twice.
What's funny about him? He went from being the guy that everybody hated in college basketball to now he's like the face of NBA media.
Yeah,
it's his rise and his change has been pretty incredible to watch.
It's been a great ride.
All right, so that team that you guys had in 2004, 4 first-round big men on the roster. It was you, it was Charlie, Josh Boone, Hilton Armstrong. Obviously, they were drafted a little bit later, but I want to know what practices were like there, because I got to imagine you guys had wars.
Oh, so the hardest, practices were intense. So Jim Calhoun's practices he just did an amazing job preparing me for the NBA, because the NBA practices never compared to Jim Calhoun's. Right? I didn't understand. I'm like, oh wow. Okay, these NBA practices are, and this is, now guys don't practice at all. This is back when the NBA, when they had like practices, right? But as I mentioned earlier, Coach Calhoun wanted to make sure, first and foremost, that you were tough. And that's what his practices were about, just being tough. Little story. My very, 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 very first practice at UConn, we started off in the field house, and, you start in the field house and you got to earn your way to Gamble. So we practiced like an hour in the field house, and then we earned our way to Gamble, practiced what seemed to be forever. And I remember going back in my dorm room, never feeling as sore as I did. I was just unbelievably sore. I couldn't get out of the fetal position that I was curled in. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this every single day? Like, forget the NBA, I can't even make it to college. Like I have to go home and, you know, I'm going to be embarrassed. Like it's impossible for me to do this ever again. But the next day happened and I got up and I was stronger. You know, I made it through. And, you know, that's what his practices were geared. He was gearing me for the journey. He was gearing me for the biggies. He was gearing me, you know, it was really more mental than anything. Just, hey, man, like, if you can get through this, you'll be all right. Just however low you go, get up, attack, and do it again.
So now we know why you always stay in shape, because you never want to be that sore again. So we're getting down to the bottom of it here. We're having a little psychology session here, Emeka. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. This is the last thing I got for you. I need your all-time UConn starting five. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. If you don't want to put yourself in there, you don't have to put yourself in there.
Dude.
I know a lot of people would, but you don't have to put yourself in there.
All time?
The point guard is the toughest spot to pick.
Dude. See, I'm going to be – so I believe our starting five is the best all time, right? So, you know, I got to put my man Talik at the one. I got to put my man Ben at the two. I'll put Rashad at the three. No, Denham. I'll put Denham at the three. I'll put Josh at the four. I'll put me at the five. I'll take that squad all day.
I love it, man. I love it.
I'll take that squad all day. Yeah.
I love it.
We'll do Rashad as a six man.
There you go. You got to just run it back, huh? That team won the title. You can't tell you guys anything, huh? Yeah. Listen, Emeka, this has been awesome. It's been great to catch up with you. I'm sure UConn fans are going to love hearing from you. Best of luck finding a place to land. And remember, that offer's still on the table, man. Men's league. Right. The best thing. I don't know. You may not get a paycheck, but at least we can offer a bar tab afterwards.
There we go. Fair enough.